Good morning and welcome to this edition of the Topical Discussion. My name is Simon Kagwanjala, and this morning we unpack everything, the highs and lows and the dynamics surrounding the ongoing protests as a leaderless movement vows to continue with the strike, with the protest, branded as March to Parliament, despite last week's ugly encounter with security that saw a number of people arrested. Well, the president came out again last week in the aftermath of the arrests and said that these protests are funded by donors. Well, what do we read between the lines? What do these protests mean to the country? And how are they redefining national politics? I'm joined this morning by Honorable Ibrahim Semjunganda, Member of Parliament, Kira Municipality, to share his perspective. A very good morning, Honorable.
Yes, morning, Simon Jara, and those who are watching and viewing the NBS.
How are you watching the political landscape as leaderless groups now take charge, making you second fiddle?
I think the reason people choose to profile themselves as a leaderless is basically to minimize the cost. Minimize the cost in a way that when you say the following are the leaders, the government will be more brutal and will seek to suppress them. You cannot say you are leaderless when you're organizing people to go on the street. How are they organizing themselves? Who is doing the communication? It's a tactic that we will say we are leaderless because you minimize the cost on individuals. Those individuals will not be picked, but I have seen people making comments on behalf of a leaderless group. So which means the group is not a leaderless, but they are minimizing the cost.
Yeah, but does the ambiguity surrounding their operations in a way shape politics?
First of all, the nature of this engagement, this interaction, the protest, is not different from protests that have happened elsewhere. In Sudan, 2018, the protests were not led by the traditional opposition groups. I remember a 22-year-old engineering university student that became a poster child, poster for the revolution, Ala Salah. Because they did not present faces that these are the leaders, but the leaders were there. Because theirs were sitting, occupy buildings, and traditional protests on the street. But when they camped at the military headquarters, and that lady climbed and began speaking on top of a vehicle, her photo now went around as if now she was the leader, 22-year-old university student, engineering. Eventually, the women played a very big role, because in all protests, people are going to be motivated by different reasons. The women in Sudan under Bashir did not want a strict radical enforcement of the Islamic Sharia on them that included restricting their movements and so on and so forth. So their participation initially had nothing to do with eventually what caused the protest, because the protest came because of the prices of bread rising from 2 to 6 Sudan. They call it, I don't remember their currency. So the initial idea around which protests were organized were economic issues of bread. But the participants were not necessarily participating because of the issue of the bread. The women participated because they say this guy is too repressive. The traditional political parties did not show their faces, but they were the ones organizing and participating. Eventually you had the professionals, union, and so on and so forth. Even in Uganda, I am sure you will be less intelligent to think that actually there are no leaders, people are just pouring on the street. The leaders are there, and the reasons are different. But we are not relegated. That's the point that Kizza Besigye kept making. People who thought that he's dying to be the president. He said, no, I went to Luwero to fight. Not because after Luwero I would be the president. Because there will at every one time be one president. So not everybody.
But isn't this new movement now an indictment on traditional politics
No,
that
it
the
isn't.
country has been used to?
It isn't.
Maybe the public is now rising up to...
No, it isn't. That's why I'm giving you the example of Sudan. When the uprising that started in April, ending Bashir's reign on April 11, 2018, it was not led by the traditional parties. But when eventually the government collapses, those who are ready to lead will be the one coming forth. Because the protests, especially when they are not structured, or if you're a professional body, if you are a civil society organization, you will not provide leaders. And that's what happened in Sudan. When eventually Bashir collapsed, the discussion was among the political leaders. It was not among the protests. And that people need to understand. In Egypt, same story. People who rose against Hosni Mubarak were ordinary people, young people, mobilizing themselves on social media to Tahrir Square for 18 days, and then Mubarak is removed by the military. When Mubarak is removed by the military, they say, okay, now we can have the election. That's how Muslim Brotherhood took over before it was eventually removed by the same military, ushering in Al-Sisi. So even in Uganda, instead of political parties, if there are those that think we have been relegated, in fact, we should be very happy. We should be very happy because you see, when you're a traditional political party...
You can't be happy when you're upstaged.
No, upstaged in what?
In the struggle.
I mean, we wanted the struggle to continue.
You have become irrelevant, literally.
You don't have to be relevant in a struggle as long as it is ongoing. When Museveni arrived here from Luwero, the first people he contacted was Democratic Party. They were not in Luwero. So Mogere did not step in Luwero. But when he was assembling a team to lead the country, Semogere was the prime minister, and all his other colleagues, Sevana, Zakaro Orumu, Robert Chitariko, etc. So nobody should think that first that the opposition and the political class is being relegated. But it's very difficult to lead a revolution when you are in a formal institution. That's why immediately protests are called. The first reaction is to raid the NUP offices in Wise. Because the thinking of Museveni and thinking of many leaders is that you can only sustain protests when you are an organized group. So you will go to NUP and close the office and so on and so forth. So the moment the opposition figures show up, if Dr. Besigye begins marching from Kasanga to marching at Parliament, Museveni will thank God, because now it will be a political contest. It will no longer be a protest about corruption. Then he will deal with you, you will be put under house arrest, and so on and so forth. So I accept people who are ignorant. For me, the youth, whoever it is, I want to encourage them to continue.
But well, the irony, while you seem to be cheering them, they are focusing on one institution, and that is Parliament. It is pegged on corruption, but Parliament is the main spotlight.
You see,
do you think they are going for the soft target and missing the bigger one?
Again, I have seen that debate, and I disagree with that thinking. I have told you in Sudan, the protest started in Atba, which is a smaller town outside Khartoum. The reason it started was because government was removing subsidies on wheat and fuel. As a result, the price of bread went from 2 Sudan, I don't know their currency is pound, whichever name, to 6. And then people say, no, we can no longer afford life. So then that, so the removal of the subsidy on wheat and fuel now became the main reason for it sparked, it was the trigger for the protest to start in Sudan. Eventually, other people joined, as I said earlier, because of different reasons. It's not that people want to go and overthrow Parliament. Nobody should be stupid to think like that. You think Museveni is marshalling all the forces and all the, because he fears that Parliament is going to be removed. Museveni knows that the anger in the country, when you look at the reason that we arrested for the uprising in Egypt, there are about 16, from repression to corruption to etc. The same story, and that's why in Kenya, the protests began because of the finance bill in Parliament. In fact, younger people went and took over Parliament. But that was not the end of the struggle. They went and took over Parliament, grabbed the mess, walked away with it. 2 days later, they were going for the main cause. This was an appetizer. So the main course was Ruto. After taking over Parliament, there was nothing to take over in Parliament. Actually, they took it over, ate food and left. And then they said, no, now Ruto must go. And Museveni understand that. So when you see the military and all the anti-terrorism equipment all in Kampala, it is not because Museveni wants to defend Parliament. Museveni is defending himself, and he understands. And that's why I have seen even colleagues with whom we are in opposition, they think we should be the one heading and driving this. We don't have to. Because the moment you seek to read it, then Museveni will know that this is the right target, and then he will accuse everybody of regime change. But there is absolutely no way you're going to accuse people you don't know, you don't see, of regime change. They are not there. The moment the opposition joins and seeks to drive it, then it will be regime change. Even the bullets will not be fired in the air. They will now be fired into people's bodies. So that's why every opposition, like people have done elsewhere in Egypt, in Sudan,
so you find
Kenya,
it prudent for opposition players to keep off?
No, the faces. You can't, I mean, in all these countries, whether it is Egypt or Sudan, they were participating, but they were not seeking to read. They were providing logistical needs, they were helping with coordination, but they knew the moment an opposition leader shows up and he seeks to become the leader, then the game is going to be played differently. But I don't know, Museveni now does not know which headquarters.
Can Uganda cope with the new paradigm shift in politics where the people that we look to be anchoring the struggle are taking a back seat, and out of the blue, from the spaces, there is a new politics emerging?
I have said, when Museveni said there will be no opposition by did he say 2020, 2021, whichever date? My response to that statement was, Museveni thinks the opposition are the leaders. And if you think the opposition are the leaders, you can even draw a list. When I am done with SJ, Semujuru Kwagana, then there will be no opposition. But the opposition is the population, and they are not just opposed to Museveni alone, but they are opposed to the administration of Museveni and what it has done or what it has not done for them, from corruption to oppression to nepotism. I have told the people that anything that a leader can do to its population, Museveni has done. There is nothing that Museveni hasn't done. He has done things no any other leader anywhere in the world has done. The man runs the country together with his family. The wife is a minister for education. I have seen his brother is in the north. He says the Operation Wealth Creation, whichever. But the military is the one that is issuing the statements about Sare's activities. The military, that in a statement I have read in the newspapers, in a statement issued by the army, of Salim Sare, who is based in Nakasongola and Nakaseke, now involved in an industrial park. But his activities, if he visits northern Uganda and is presiding over a function, the person who issues a statement to explain what Sare is doing is the army. His son is the head of the military, all the relatives. So anything bad that a leader can do to people is leading Museveni has done, and he knows it. So this anger in the population, I don't think it's the anger necessarily against Anita Among and the Parliament, but you've been in schools. Children will protest because of food, they will burn the library, they will beat the headmaster, they will remove everything. You cannot tell me that anger against food results into all this, because this is cumulative. People see all this, they are helpless. So when they raise up, they will be targeting. That's why in Kenya they were rooting. people who were protesting against finance bill, they were carrying fridges. What did the fridges of Somalis and other people in Kenya have to do with the finance bill? But when you keep a population in poverty, the other day I was telling MPs in the parliament, when you read the report of the National Bureau of Statistics 2020, multidimensional poverty, because they were praising Museveni over Karamoja, and I said, you guys, maybe we are reading different scripts. The report, an official report of government says multidimensional poverty in Karamoja is at 82%, followed by Acholi at 60-something. Overall poverty is at 60%. So these young poor people on the streets in Kampala, in Wakiso, in Mukono, and everywhere I have visited, they are just waiting, and Museveni knows it. And usually the mistakes that dictators make, instead of using resources to deal with unemployment and other economic issues, they use the resources to strengthen the army, strengthen the police.
Yeah, but you've also had the lethal response from the president, where he says the youth, the Bazukulu in this case, are playing with fire.
Yeah, so what did you want Museveni to say? So if you are faced with a demonstration in the capital, whose direction you don't know, you will certainly have. That's what Gaddafi did. Gaddafi and his son, because they were running the country together, the same way you will see when Museveni wants the military deployed, he will call his son Muhoozi Kainerugaba to say how many brigades are ready for Kampala. Gaddafi told the people in Benghazi that, please, I am coming to fumigate you cockroaches. The following morning, the son said, we are on our way, until he was removed. That's what they all do. They will issue threats. Bashir was issuing threats, making the same statements that Museveni is making here, accusing infiltrators. Because for Bashir, some of his economic policies had been imposed on him by IMF because he needed to deal with an economic crisis. And they said, for you to be able to deal with this economic crisis, first you need to end government subsidies. That's what he did when he took over government.
Do you want to dismiss the notion that these protests are fueled by donors?
If the civil society is participating, all civil societies in Uganda, nearly all of them, receive funding from outside. Nearly all of them. So if they are going to play a role, certainly Museveni will now use that to say, Museveni has no problem if civil society receive money for a seminar for climate change. They go to Masaka to teach women the dangers of this and that. But he will have problems with any money coming in to organize a demonstration, to deal with the issues of human rights violation, civic issues. But he has had no problem with the civil society organizing seminars at Africana and elsewhere. So he's just being double-faced. You mean Museveni is realizing that there is some money coming in to do some work in Uganda? And I'm not saying that I have evidence that this money is what is. Because you see, the younger people who are on the street, what do they need? I have seen some of them are printing, even the T-shirts, you see demonstration, they are not of the same color. Some have white, others have this and what. So they're thinking that for a demonstration to take place, you need a lot of money. Is also a wrong thinking. I don't know how much money people needed to protest when Bobi Wine was arrested in Ruuka, or when Dr. Kizza Besigye was arrested in Busega. All the protests that we have had in Uganda, maybe what you need is to buy some food and take for these children who are in police cells. It's not a lot of money that is required for a demonstration, but Museveni thinks that, and he has said that before his entire political infrastructure, that these younger people, you wait, he will parade them. You see, it is the same script. When we are the ones demonstrating, Museveni went around assembling a group of younger people, and they said we are paying them 20,000 per day for participating in the demonstration. And I can assure you, Njara, in about a week or two, you will see Museveni parading younger people, and they will be confessing that we are given 50,000 to participate, including those, and mostly those who are not participating. So he uses the same script, whether the protest is by the formal traditional opposition group, whether it is by leaderless, faceless, he will make the same comment, substituting the target for attack.
Yeah, but again, to what extent do you think that this metamorphosis of the struggle from having leaders to being in this ambiguous shape, to what extent does it spell better or bad politics for the country?
I have seen, again, people making comments. I want to go back to 2000 elections, 2006 elections. At that time, when Museveni changed the constitution between 2003 and 2005 to remain in power, you were dealing with the known political, many of them well-meaning Ugandans who were saying, please, we need to have peaceful transfer of power. Mr. Museveni frustrated that. People need to go back and look at that. The leaders that you had at that time, with clout, with experience, one by one, either they have resigned, they have grown old. Because you see, I remember one of the problems in FDC with the late Kategaya. I think one of the senior leaders in FDC had revealed what he should not have revealed. That Kategaya and Mushega and others, Wafula, went to meet Mkapa in Tanzania. Today I am not sure that the caliber of leaders that we are, including myself, that you will seek an appointment with the president of Tanzania and that president will meet you, that the president of Kenya will meet you. If you look at the seminars, the PAFO under Kazora, Salamu Musumba, Ruzindana, the meeting, the organizing, they were inviting into the country former Chief Justice in Tanzania, former commander in Kenya, and so on and so forth. That's the opportunity that we lost. Because at that time, Museveni will be handing over, or he will be allowing other leaders to come and take over the state. There will be continuity, and that's why people were clamoring for peaceful and orderly transfer of power. If you have the luxury not to allow that, then power will shift by itself. I remember when we were with Tango Doe here, and he was attacking Bob Wine. I told him, you see, you can attack Bob Wine, but when a revolution, when you have younger people pouring on the street to remove you, they may not even think of who the leader will be. You will end up with anyone because you have not participated. In Ghana, the reason Ghana is stable, they may face the same economic hardship like any African country, is that they sat down and agreed under Rawlings. We need to write a new constitution of 2 terms, 4 terms each. We eventually even enacted a transitional act that when one government loses power, this is how it will be handing over to another. They did the formal things, and that's why there is a peaceful transfer of power. They have now changed the government more than 4 times. Museveni has fought that. In the 9th Parliament, Dr. Baiga came with a transitional bill in Parliament, private members' bill, and he said the power, so after election, this is what will happen until May, because we have, I think, one of the longest period before a government assumes power, that you conclude elections in February, and there is no law guiding what will happen. In Ghana, it was chaos, people storming offices, kicking each other. So that opportunity that we lost at the country of orderly, peaceful transfer of power and one set of leaders transferring power to another set of leaders, all those leaders I have mentioned, be it Mushega, be it Kategaya, be it Richard Kaijuka, all those you lost, they all went either aged and left. And then you had another set of leaders, the Kazoras, the Musumba, the Besigye Muntu, and others. Those ones are also on their way out. I am not sure, and I don't want to pretend, that we have the same crowd and experience like the people I have mentioned. We are just new running on the job. That's why in my constituency, some think you have also overstayed. Which experience do I have in running the state? Those who are following me, if I have no experience, it is a disaster. And Uganda, I can tell you sooner than later, will fall into the hands of those ones with no experience, with no connection, with no regional knowledge. And that's how countries disintegrate. That's how Somalia disintegrated. That's Sudan now is fighting. All our neighbors, you learn from them, Congo, etc. So the opportunity that Museveni has denied Uganda was a peaceful, orderly transfer of power from one set of leaders to another set of leaders.
What?
The moment you deny that, the population that want change will continue pushing for it. It does not matter who will be. When children are removing a headmaster, they don't care who the caretaker will be. They will ban the library, they will ban the headmaster's office, his car and everything, and then you begin reconstruction. That's why poor countries, when Museveni came here, even had a ministry for reconstruction. So don't be surprised that after Museveni, we'll again have ministries for reconstruction.
Well, Honorable Ssemujju, have you critically looked at the president's response to the protests on X, on the socials, where in one of the paragraphs he said that demonstration had two bad elements. Element one was funding from foreign sources that are always meddling in the internal affairs of Africa for the last 600 years, slave trade, colonialism, he goes on. The second element was that some of the authors and the participants of the demonstrations were planning very bad things against the people of Uganda. Those very bad things will come out in court when those arrested are being tried. It is possible that some of the participants did not know of the planned foreign funding and the planned bad things.
There will be an attempt to demonize everybody who is on the street. There will be an attempt. But if you don't want interference, you deal with your domestic issues honestly and justifiably. You deal with them. If you don't deal with them, you're inviting everybody. When you're a poor country like Uganda, you will go around looking for funding, what they call foreign direct investment. You'll even hear them celebrate that foreign direct investment has increased. Isn't that foreign interference? That people are bringing in money. When you bring in investors, they want stability. If you become a source of stability, because you see someone who has invested $100 million in Uganda, he will not be able to recoup profit on his money and the money he has invested in 20 years. It's not easy that you invest in a country $100 million and in 10 years that money, you've got it and walk out. So even the investor that Museveni thinks are very happy with him, they want a stable country that transfers power from one group to another. Then they will know that their investment is safe. So while Museveni is receiving and celebrating direct foreign investment, he thinks those who are bringing money from outside don't want to protect their money. They will actually be the ones who are funding everybody to make sure that there is peaceful transfer of power. That doesn't surprise me. But the statement of Museveni is not a honest statement. He simply wants to demonize those who are demonstrating, present them as mercenaries that are hired. We have faced the same problem all the time. I have told you he was parading younger people and he said these ones you are paying them 20,000 every day to go on the street, including those we had never seen, including those who had never demonstrated. And I said, knowing Museveni, that is going to be the next stage. You will see a group of younger people. They will say we are paid by this civil society organization, we are paid by this foreign country, because he does that all the time.
Well, as we take a very short break, while you all praises for the groups that are protesting, are you persuaded to join them?
I have been protesting. I've even gone, I've been almost at all police stations in Kampala, whether it is Jinja Road, whether it is CPS and everywhere. I have also ended up in Luzira because of protests. So the appetite is still there, but I don't want to be a spoiler. If there is any role that I will play, if it is going to be a backup, I will play it. I don't want to be a spoiler because I want, in Europe they say, competing for soundbite. That because I have seen a protest, I must join. So Njara can film me and say, Ssemujju is a freedom fighter. I only want to add value.
Yeah, but they're coming for you. They're coming for MPs. Will you be spared?
But Parliament is not my home. Even if they come and take it over, you mean I will not go home? They can actually come and take it over.
Well, we'll take a very short break, and when we return, we'll still be looking at where these protests are headed and what they spell for national politics. Good morning. Well, still focusing on what the current political wave portends for national politics as youth and online bloggers vow to continue with rallying Ugandans to march to Parliament and protest against the wayward corruption that has eaten into the core of the country. Well, when you look at things and how they're unfolding, there is certainly that sense that the struggle is at crossroads. Do we take this path? Do we take this path? You tend to think that this is ideal for the country, but do you have an end in sight? We need to topple the regime.
The clamor for, again I would repeat myself, the clamor for orderly and peaceful transfer of power was and is intended to avoid the turmoil that almost everybody else has gone through. And we don't have to go to Makerere. We just have to visit Somalia, Sudan, Libya, Egypt, etc. These are living examples for anyone who wants to learn. Nobody will determine how this will end. But when you have, and African leaders are very selfish.
But they're crushable.
No, you can crush a few people who come on the street, but thousands don't like you.
Given the ruthlessness, you've had the president.
The deployment of the military hardware, the anti-terrorism vehicles, was not because Museveni was fearing the dozens who were protesting. Actually, the fear is against the whole population, because that population has exploded before. You may succeed during the Kyagulanyi arrest, the Kayunga, the Besigye. You may not be successful all the time. Because you see, in Uganda, what hasn't happened, that eventually will also happen. You have not had the armed people joining. Museveni has just increased the salary of policemen and military. You don't know how many phone calls I receive every day. These guys promised us 25%. They have only added for the lower cadres only 70,000. So if the intention was to calm them down, they are angry as any other person, because they also cannot meet the cost of the basic life. They can't take their children to school. They sleep. I mean, I have seen photographs of police quarters. You see, this country was such a beautiful country. The colonialist left police stations built like hotels, from Jinja Road to Chira Road to everywhere. Now look at what used to be Mategura tiles. They have all fallen off. You now have decaying wood. So these policemen are also sleeping, and they don't live a different life like people there. Unfortunately, they haven't picked courage. I told the people in Kasoko sometimes not to be very angry with the police, because they even tear gas their own wives when they were protesting, when government disconnected electricity and water in the barracks. The husbands were tear gassing wives. So they are still slaves. Many of the people, armed people are still slaves. They are paid poorly, they feed them. One time I was arrested and taken to Jinja Road police station here. You can imagine, I was inside the police cell, but policemen were reporting to me that these guys deployed us for 2 days without food. Can you imagine reporting to a prisoner?
So, and what did they want you to do for them?
They wanted me to speak the same way I'm speaking for them, that the promise was 25% salary increment, but they have given them 70%. You see, the thinking by people who are holding power is that all the armed forces are ours. You can deploy them, but the day they turn against you, and that's the greatest fear that many of us have, that you see, you are now dealing with civilians protesting. Once the armed people join, and they will join, it's just a matter of time. I have told you they live in worse condition than people they are tear gassing and beating. I don't think they enjoy it. I have been arrested many times. Those who arrest you, the senior officers, because they come from the same area with Museveni, they will be swearing and abusing you. But the ones who are driving you, you will go having a conversation with them. They will tell you their conditions. So the area we go back to negotiating and discussing a peaceful transfer of power, the better for everybody.
Yeah, but these are very unprecedented times in the politics of the country. Is the end predictable?
It is not. It is not, because as I said earlier, Museveni keeps investing in repression, keeps investing in buying more military hardware, keeps investing in buying more anti-terrorism and anti-riot equipment. They will even parade them. The other day I saw them parading vehicles, tear gas vehicles. We have brought new ones. You should be investing.
The new fleet.
Yes, you should be investing in dealing with unemployment. You have nearly 2 million children who are in the Middle East working as maids. The others on the street, just visit any town after here. You will see the younger people who are stayed alongside the roads, just talking, waiting for an opportunity to go to South Sudan. I was in Juba. In Juba, we are told by the Ugandan embassy that you now today have more than 1 million Ugandans who are in South Sudan, which is also almost stateless. 1 million. So people are looking for the next opportunity, and they know you are the cause of their trouble because they have gone to countries and they have seen prosperity. Those countries are not run by angels from heaven. They are run by human beings. You who is mismanaging the country and you think the only way of staying in power is ordering for the latest model of tear gas vehicle from South Africa, anti-riot equipment, you are just buying time. You are just buying time.
Yeah, but do you realize that the president has either been smart or very alert in turning this political from shifting from the fight against corruption?
You see, first of all, the fight against corruption is a fight against Museveni. All these others are just ADs. We pass a budget every year. This year, the budget was 72 trillion. The bulk of that budget is wasted by Museveni. He picks all the money and uses it to rent for support. He's the one who is giving money to all sorts of people. From Magora, the other day I made a presentation. Magora alone, and you may not know Magora. Magora was arrested together with Michael Mawana, who is in Ruzira, and Isaac Musumba in India. And eventually, when he went to the Indian court, he was compensated $50 million US. He came back here. I am told 20 million went to NRM, and NRM is Museveni. And Museveni has a way of working with mafia and Bafere. I don't know how someone who has been a suspect in India now became such a huge investor in Uganda that you must give him 700 billion. Someone who has been a suspect in India, Magora. Now Museveni has given him 732 billion that is going to develop a pharmaceutical. You remember the story of Sudhir being arrested, money laundering at Entebbe by Major Katafiri. That major died. From a suspect at Entebbe airport to now a biggest investor working with the government. So Museveni likes working with Bafere. So what motivates people to raise against Museveni? They may be urged by social media actors, by political parties, but they live this misery. So Museveni is not smart, and I want to answer that finally. He's not smart. He acts exactly like any other dictator in Africa has acted. Whether it is Gaddafi after 43 years in power, Gaddafi continued thinking that he was a solution to all problems in Libya. 43 years in power. Mugabe, after so many years, thought he was still the solution for the problems of Zimbabwe. Biya in Cameroon, he has been in power for now 42 years. He's 91 years old. He has even said he will contest election 2026. He will be 93. Museveni officially will be 80 this year. I'm saying officially because he says he doesn't know when he was born. But you can see the energy in him has really waned. So he's no longer an energetic Museveni who goes to address rallies. But Museveni still thinks after 40 years in power that is the solution. And what are part of his plan? Buy the latest model of anti-riot, prepare the military, prepare the police, go and beat everybody who is saying, please, it is time up for you as you prop up your son because the family must continue. So he hasn't acted smart. I think Ruto has tried, although the environment in Kenya hasn't allowed him because of the cumulative effect of the past government. But the decisions he took, some of them you need to applaud them. If the citizens are protesting against many taxes, you can introduce them progressively and gradually. You may not have to bring them the 190 taxes. He has a restructured government. He is not investing so much in crushing the protests. Of course they are, but he's trying to deal with the problems these people are raising. Museveni is investing so much in crushing the protests other than dealing with the issues that they are raising.
Yeah, but
I'll give you an example. I read the issues as for the leaderless people. I don't know who put them in the Daily Monitor, but this Monitor had about 7 issues. And then they must resign. Commissioners must resign. You must reduce the size of parliament. Let me deal with one issue that is very fundamental.
Are they significant or frivolous?
Some of them are. The one of Anita resigning and the commissioners resigning, Anita, those ones can be replaced and the problem will remain. But there are structural issues that you can deal with. Next elections, 2026, if you remember, the Electoral Commission unveiled a 2-year strategic plan in which they said the cost of organizing elections and attendant activities will be 2.5 trillion, 2.5 trillion. We have now just borrowed 1 trillion from World Bank to do roads in Kampala and Wakiso. 1 trillion. That's the money we are using to fix roads in Kampala and Wakiso. But we will spend 2.5 trillion on organizing elections. Why? Because in Uganda, in the last elections, elective positions were 2.8 million. The projection of Electoral Commission is that there will be 3.5 elective positions in Uganda. The youth councils from village to national are 500,000. So are councils of people with a disability. So are councils for youth and all women, what. So you are a poor country that is borrowing money to construct roads in your capital and the metropolitan, 1 trillion from World Bank, but you're also looking for money 2.5, 2 times bigger than the money you're going to spend on the road infrastructure in Kampala. So what do? The only mistake I see is that people are agitating that you reduce the size of parliament. Yes, the size of parliament can reduce, but the problem will remain. You need to deal with it holistically. I looked at the budget of local government. Next financial year, no, this financial year which we have just ended, the budget of local government has been 6 trillion. 4.5 trillion is on salaries for councillors.
Passed by parliament.
Yes, passed by parliament. We make this
So
argument.
parliament is the problem.
They don't listen. NRM MPs do. Yes, parliament is a problem, a huge problem. Even when you raise these issues that I am raising, they will put you on order. They will shout until you finish your presentation. And that's why when people are making a go at him, I sometimes celebrate. And I keep telling the entire tell you. So you have a budget of local government, 6 trillion. Only 600 billion will be used on development. The rest is allowances. So when you are dealing with the cost of administration, don't focus yourself only on the size of parliament. Parliament is just an illustration how constituencies have been germinating like beans almost every election. Museveni will add 60. I represent a constituency of 500,000 people. We have an MP who represents 3,000 people in parliament. He can hold one rally and everybody will be spoken to. So you need to deal with the cost of administration. The wage bill this financial year has gone to 8 trillion. You're not only paying parliament, you're paying everybody, all sorts of people doing nothing.
Honorable Ssemujju.
Yes.
I understand everything, but the new crop that is now at the front line are the Bazukulus and the elites who have hitherto been accused of being laid back. Yeah. Can they really sustain a struggle? Given even the baptism of fire, how they were violently quelled.
The advantage with the new technology is that even if they storm your headquarters for a press conference, you can still speak to the public. In the past, we went around the country, they were switching off generators. You go to speak to Katakwi, as VSJ enters the studio, they are switching off the generators. You go to Jinja, you face the same problem. I have seen Museveni assembling ICT experts. If you look at his residence, State House, and he has more than 100 ICT officers. By the way, they are also participating. When you see social media postings, even Museveni is participating. He said, because you see that has become a new area of communication. And that's why the other day I was advising my leader at Parliament, the leader of opposition, that to be very careful with the person who is illuminating the path you are taking. Sometimes they may illuminate you away from the problem and take you to to another problem because he's participating. It will depend on how much inroads Museveni makes. But at least today, more than before, people can communicate without entering a radio station, without entering a TV station. That luxury now exists. It never used to exist. And that's, I think, what Museveni did. That's why I think I am told, because me, I don't operate any social media account, but I'm told the Facebook is still closed. I don't know whether he will seek to close others, because that's what happened in Sudan. When there was an uprising against Bashir, they started by closing social media networks. Eventually, they switched off internet. If Museveni was not using internet for many other things, by now it would be off. But he also is a consumer. So the times that we are living in are completely different. People may maneuver. The physical participation by pouring...
You look at the assault, the arrests, the brutal arrests, the beatings.
But also responding on what you don't know. Because you see, the fear, as I said earlier, is that Museveni thinks if you have 100 people, tomorrow they will grow. Because that's what happened elsewhere. In Khartoum, around April 6, they were still making agitations. But even if in about less than 10 days, al-Bashir had gone. In Egypt, I think they spent about 18 days. So Museveni knows that once the agitation has not died, once it has not gone away, you don't know who will be frustrated. Because you see, we are living in cages. Once it explodes, everybody will seek to run out. In Tunisia, the uprising that took Ben Ali was because of a hawker who set himself on fire out of frustration. You mean that was the cause of the revolution, that someone has set himself on fire and you go on the street? There were many other causes. All the things cumulatively that Museveni has done, he knows them. He's not ignorant. Museveni is intelligent. He does these things deliberately.
Yeah, but there are signals that this is a doomed struggle. When you look at what happened on day one.
It can only be a doomed struggle if Museveni begins walking away from the bigger strategic mistakes he has made over a period of so many years. You organize peaceful transfer of power and you announce, I am not seeking re-election. You get your families out of government and out of big businesses. You deal with nepotism. You deal with the cost of administration. The moment you begin dealing with the underlying causes, I have said when I was on a show here, the factors that caused the World War did not spark it off. It is other issues that sparked it off, but because these factors remain unresolved, when eventually something small sparked it off, all these factors came into play. And that's how Museveni will go. He will think that people are dealing with Anita Among at Parliament and corruption when they are dealing with the whole structure of the state and how Museveni has personalized it and made it family. So the day people pour on the street, they have not been successful before, not because there has been no attempt, and this is a new attempt. There has actually been a bigger attempt before. Once that bigger attempt crystallizes itself and it's back on the street, you may not stop. I have told you, these military, we live with them. They live the same miserable life like many Ugandans. Just wait one day when they join.
Do you support the march on churches and mosques?
The march on churches and mosques?
Yes, because that's now the phase it's taking.
No. I want to be very careful. I want to be very careful. That's why I said I need to be very careful. When you hear the march on mosques and churches, you need to be sure who is now diverting people from Parliament to churches. As I said, Museveni has 100 ICT officers just at his residence, but he has many others. So you may think that that's what I told the Honorable Senior at the beginning. Be very careful.
Someone is cunningly coming in.
Be very careful with the person who is illuminating your path. He may actually illuminate you from where you have been heading to a wrong direction. So the youth who are participating in these protests and calling for protests, be very careful. Now Museveni may take you to churches, and then you lose the church and the mosques altogether. And then you will now be on your own. That's why I said Museveni has not been very strong with the new technology because he can't stop communication, but he will use it to cause division, the same division that you see in the opposition. He will seek to cause the same divisions among people who are protesting. And one way of causing division Because why would you march to my mosque in Bukasa where you go for prayers? What crime has the mosque committed?
To remind the cleric to stand up to corruption.
No, because the moment you begin physically marching towards my mosque, you're inviting me to defend it. And then it will be a fight amongst ourselves, the same way you have seen fights within the opposition. So let those who are calling for marches be very careful. Someone may, out of excitement, begin illuminating you towards churches and mosques and markets and so on and so forth. Yes. And then Museveni will say, didn't I tell you that actually the problem is not Anita Among, the problem is not Parliament, but the problem is foreign funding. So people need to be very careful. I have been in this life now for the last 15, 16 years. I know how Museveni operates. He will even march people to the markets that they have beaten people in Owino market. And then he will say, now why did I tell you? Then Owino market will demand for security. Now he will say, okay, security because Owino has been attacked. So you are dealing with someone with bad intentions, someone who has mastered this game. So you need to be very careful. Don't lose focus. Don't recruit sympathizers for him. Please, if you do that, then he will go and deploy at mosques.
What do you think of the death of traditional politics? We are not having press conferences anymore. People are going online.
Yeah, because the reason you don't have press
you are
conferences,
irrelevant. The traditional politicians.
The reason you are not having press conferences is because even the mode of communication has changed. Dr. Besigye used to walk back into the country from visiting, and then the first thing to do is to organize a press conference. Now you will see him speaking even when he's not here. So we must learn that we are living in different times, and in Nigeria you need to learn. The other day I was with Safaricom. They were explaining the transformation that has happened. There was a time when we had Radio Uganda and the UTV, and all the communications are done by them. Then we moved to liberalization of the broadcasting. That's how the NBSs came in. We now have people on their phone communicating. So we must also learn to live within the time, because if you continue living in the same way of a traditional press conference at Naja Nankombe, which you call a week after, I mean, I don't think it makes sense anymore, but you can continue making them as complementary. But otherwise, they can no longer be the traditional way, you cannot continue with the traditional way of communicating. Before you communicate, the people will be marching to Naja Nankombe.
What are the chances that these protests will be sustainable? Or they will be nipped in the bud?
It depends on how much courage and resilience people are involved have. And that's why you see...
Do they need to speak to you think?
In revolutions, you may need leaders. You see, Mandela was arrested, but he became the focal point of the fight against apartheid in South Africa. For us here, it has been Dr. Besigye all these years. When you are at your home, sometimes the body is unwilling to participate. They tell you Dr. Besigye has been arrested. You have no option but to go on the street, even when the body is tired. I remember we had to stop Dr. Besigye when they shot him and he went to Nairobi. He came back here. Someone who has been in hospital and said the following day I am starting. I remember Honorable Winnie Byanyuma and the family and some of us saying, please, you need to take a break. So you may need people who are going to make a bit of a sacrifice. When they release you from Luzira, tomorrow you are on the street and then back to Luzira. I don't know how many times Besigye has been arrested. So you need someone to continue inspiring. The communication on social media may continue, but the physical movement on the street need people who are courageous. And that's why you may, I don't want these protests politicized, but you may have no option but sometimes to enlist the support of the political actors, because they have a following that they can. The trouble, the moment you do that, then Museveni is going to isolate you, thinking that now you want to remove me, and you can now speak to...
So do you get a sense that the battle now is between Bazukulu and the regime?
The battle is with the population, everybody.
No.
Everybody is in this battle, even those who are not participating. The trouble is that at 80, like all the, because look at all the other African leaders, be it the one of Guinea, 41 years in power, Biya, and Museveni at 80, and so on and so forth. Even when you're communicating, I saw my father. He was very strict when we were growing up. We were 43 children. The younger, we were 43.
Oh.
Yeah. So the younger ones, we are no longer listening. He actually became a source of entertainment. They were just laughing at his orders. But us, he would issue an order and physically follow you to make sure that you've implemented it. But the younger ones, he gradually lost energy to run after them. So he issues an order, they laugh. So Museveni is soon becoming a laughing stock. These younger people, when he issues order, just imagine Museveni found me 12 years old. I am now 52. This year I will make 52. There are children who have been born when Museveni is a leader. So his orders are just going to begin laughing at him, and he will be shocked because you are dealing with a completely different generation. You can no longer blackmail them by the history, by Obote, by Amin, by what. Some of them don't even know Amin until they go to school and read about him. So the communication he was making to his contemporaries, the Kategayas, people who follow them, the Vestiges, and some of us he found when we were young, that has ended. You are now speaking to a completely different generation that will not be blackmailed by history, a generation that actually want a better future because they have seen it elsewhere and they can't continue walking out of the country, snaking out to the Middle East and Europe and so on and so forth. And that's what the Musevenis did at their age. When things were bad in Uganda, you may think that these things are, the children of today are different. They are not. All children are the same. They will be restless. Yeah, at 37, Museveni went to lead the Muntu Zoo at 22 in a row. So younger people are restless, they are ambitious. You will not stop that, whether you have the latest mode of military hardware. You will not stop it.
Well, at every corner, there is a new struggle that is greeted with a lot of euphoria. I remember when the People Power movement was being ushered in, people thought it was breathing new life. To the contrary, it turned out to be just any other political outfit.
You see, the part of the problem we have faced is that when you are led by people who are seeking, who are looking for offices, the moment they get them, they reduce on the energy that they are deploying. Semuju will pour on the street, he will even roll in the mud because there is an election coming up 2026. When he achieves it, then he will go on holiday, then he will go and rest. And that's the beauty of it. That's why I'm more excited by people who are not seeking office. General Muntu used to say that when you put office seeking at the forefront of your struggle, it has its own problems. So we'll need a struggle that is not led by people who are seeking offices. Many of the colleagues that you see, including myself, I don't want to present myself as an angel. The motivation usually is the next election. The moment it is finished, people will stay back. And that's why I will always be grateful to Besigye, who almost every after election, he was starting the next day after election. Something that many of us don't do. In fact, I remember a colleague, I will not say the name, she was advising me after 2011 that please don't continue with the protest. You need to wait until you are sworn in as an MP. Because I went to Luzira before the swearing in, and she was telling me, they may swear in MPs when you are away. Please reduce on protests. So the trouble in Uganda is that people who are seeking offices always want to be the leaders of this revolution, yet their target is a short term. Once it is achieved, they will disappear. I saw with the Besigye. When you are starting towards the election, everybody will participate. After election, they will be choosing and bashing Besigye. Others will even undermine him because he wants consistently, the requirement is that you must consistently be on the street. So when a bulk of your army, and I have seen, including those people around Chagulanyi, who are around everybody, many of them, and Besigye is very angry with that, many of them in a protest, they will put up a poster, Semujunganda for Chira Municipality 2026. So you participate in a protest just to gain visibility. And then you launch yourself into, so use the protest as a launching pad into your political career. So that has an effect. And I hope these ones who are organizing and are not seeking offices, because the moment they begin seeking for offices, as soon as they have made some political capital, they will now reduce.
So you think what has affected NUP is the search for offices and political survival?
It affected FDC, it affected everybody. that when you are a leader, you are surrounded by office seekers. So they will drive all their vehicles, escort you wherever you are going, because they want cameras to point at them as they cash in on either your propriety of the issues. And as soon as they succeed in that, they will disappear. Because primarily they are not in this to remove a regime or to stop and cause, and support a cause. But they are in it because they want to be in offices in the next election. That has been a very big issue.
There is every sense that the youth in Uganda are being inspired by Gen Z in Kenya.
Who would not be inspired? The trouble is that we deal with completely different situations. But the inspiration, you always draw inspiration and strength from others.
Is there any contrast between the youth here and the Gen Zs in Kenya?
They are not different. The only difference is that here you are dealing with a military dictatorship. You are dealing with a family rule. You are dealing with the private institutions. In Kenya, Ruto wanted the military and the police to stop the demonstration. They even went to court. Because in Kenya, the state is not as private as it is here. The military is not private. It's not headed by a son. In fact, Kenyans keep laughing at us, even at the level of parliament. They ask, how did you allow Museveni to appoint his son head of the military and his wife minister for education? They laugh at us. We are laughing stock. So the situation that people will draw inspiration, they will pick courage from what is happening in Kenya, but we need to be more courageous than Kenyans because we deal with a completely different monster.
Okay. Can this protest morph into a revolution to watch? Or for now, we can only treat it as a protest?
If the people agitating and participating in the protest, if they don't get diverted by what Besigye calls Museveni's timetable of elections and continue, it will be very good for the country. Because you see, you may not succeed in removing Museveni outrightly, but when he sees too much pressure, he will cede territory. But when he sees no action, and I think this time, I had a friend who told me that these 5 years is a dead year. We have not put as much effort as was done by Besigye in the previous cycles. That we have even afforded Museveni time to go and begin partying. The other day, his wife was in Ruwero celebrating 75, 76 years, things they have not done before. I think we've not put enough. The moment you put enough pressure, that's why Professor Answam used to say that democracy does not settle for a passive citizenry. So the moment you may not outrightly remove Museveni, but Museveni is a human being. I don't think the 36 FDC youth who were arrested in Kenya, they had gone for a seminar, but Kenya was fearing that they came to coordinate protests there and handed them over to Uganda. They are in Nagarama. These ones who have been picked around Kampala at CPS, others in Kira Road. If you begin protesting every day, I was in Ruzira, I was in Maxoni Bay, that's where I was staying during the walk to work. Ruzira is full. The only trouble is that not many people are willing. But there is no way Museveni is going to arrest 1 million people, or even 500,000, or even 200,000. He has no detentions to put them there. These policemen, if you keep them on the street every day and military people, they also get tired. That's why I said...
With your seniority, I would be expecting you to call for dialogue, not protests.
Protest is a communication guaranteed by the Constitution. I did not author the Constitution, but the Constitution said people can protest. Even when you are making the Public Order and Management Act, we said protests can be there, demonstrations. They are lawful, they are in the law. It's not that people are reinventing. Actually, the law provides for protest as a form of communication. And not all protests are calling for a regime change. Mine will be calling for Museveni to go. These ones are saying Anita Amongo must resign, the commissioners must go, the size of parliament must be reduced, there must be a lifestyle audit on MPs and so on and so forth. So really, demonstrations and protests are legal and they are lawful, and I support them 100%.
Before anyone joins these protests, is there a cause for people to read between the lines and maybe be cautious on the intention and the sponsors?
For me, the sponsors do not matter. When Museveni was in Luwero fighting, all the robbers in Kampala who were being hunted down by government joined him. That's how the Dragonians ended there. Was he chasing them? When you are fighting, everybody who is rendering a hand, you will welcome, whether he's a foreigner, whether he's a neighbor, because you have something troubling you and you are seeking for support of everybody. When Museveni was in Luwero fighting,
what if it is money from wicked imperialists to promote their cause?
He was in Libya looking for money. He took his family to Sweden. So who doesn't seek foreign support when you are pursuing something? Who doesn't? You want to think that Museveni was not. Where did he get the guns? Even when he took over power, the first thing he did was to go looking for money from outside. It's a diversion. It's a diversion. Museveni wants to present people who are protesting as mercenaries. In my view, they are not. But they will seek help from wherever it exists. And it is legal and it's understood.
Well, we need to close this here. And I must really thank you, Honorable Ibrahim Ssemujju, for coming in to share your insights and perspective on the current politics and what it spells for the future of the country. That's it from me. Have a lovely day and cheers.